Welcome back to the Literary Lori YouTube channel. I'm Literary Lori. I'm a traditionally published Black American author currently based in the south of Spain. If you tuned into this video, then you probably want to know what it is, the one thing that you, my fellow BIPoC writers, need to do to stay motivated and keep yourself writing even during hard times. And I'm going to share with you what that is right now. All right, so we're in tough times. There are threats all around us, perceived and real, of things that are going to make it difficult for BIPoC writers particularly to not only keep writing, but to get published and get their work out into the world. So I wanted to create this video to explain exactly what it is you need to do to stay motivated, to keep writing, and to keep publishing. And not only what it is you need to do, but how to do it. So I'm going to do all of that in this video. I'm going to tell you what it is you need to do, how you need to do it, and I'm also going to give you some examples of proof that the concept works. All right? So here we go. What it is that all of my fellow BIPoC writers need to do in order to stay motivated, not only to stay motivated, but to actually keep writing and keep getting your work out in the world, is to cultivate a mindset of delusion. I am serious. I sound like I'm joking, but I am 100% serious in that what it is that you need to do as a writer is to cultivate a delusional belief, an overwhelmingly delusional belief in your right and responsibility to write. And not only a responsibility to write, but a responsibility and a right to put your work out into the world. Yes, I am talking about cultivating a mindset of delusion. I will promise you by the end of this video, you will believe me and hopefully you will be ready to buy into the concept. All right, so let me just start with a quick overview and what I mean by this. So in order to keep coming to the page every single day and writing your romance novels, your fantasy novels, your nonfiction books, your Substack posts, your poetry. Like, you need to have something that keeps you motivated, that keeps you coming back to the page, right? Now, when we are in times like we are right now, if you are watching this in real time, the threat of generative AI, the threat of World War III, the constant talk about the publishing industry imploding, contracting, the statistics that say that people don't read anymore, all of this is enough to make any writer throw away the pen and decide that it's not even worth trying, particularly writers of color, particularly women writers of color, because we always seem to be the first people on the chopping block. Oh, I didn't even mention book bans. You know, if they're banning books at record numbers, it seems that people of color, authors of color, their books are, again, one of the first ones to be banned. So with all of these threats circling around us, it is understandably really hard to stay motivated, to force yourself to sit down and write when you might think there's no point, which is when the delusional mindset comes in. And honestly, this is not anything new. I am not suggesting something that I just made up. I am a student of history. I pay attention not just to the works of our great writers, but I pay attention to their lifestyles, their mindsets, because I want to know, like, I'm in this for the long haul, and I want to make sure that I am a successful writer. So I study the works and the lives of our ancestors, our literary ancestors. And this is what I can say, 100%. It's the delusional mindset, that delusional belief that you have the right and the responsibility to write and get your work out there. Let's think about this for a second. Do you think that when the fascists were bombing Spain during the Spanish Civil War, somebody was like, Mr. Picasso, could you please, I don't know, while you're, waiting in a bomb shelter, could you paint something that's going to be one of your most famous paintings ever? Because somehow painting is going to stop the war. No, that is not what happened. Picasso was in the midst, hiding out like everybody else in Spain, doing whatever it is he could to survive a horrible civil war. And when the fascists bombed, one of their worst bombings in the Spanish Civil War, it inspired Picasso to paint something, to try to show in his own way the horrors of war. And that painting, Guernica, is the result of that work that he did during that horrible time. It was one of the greatest, it's one of his most well-known paintings, I should say. And it was his response because he was a painter. He was an artist. So again, nobody said, hey, why don't you do this while this terrible war is happening? It's what he did because he had a delusional belief that his painting would mean something. And of course it did. Likewise, Phillis Wheatley. Do you think anybody said to Phillis Wheatley, hey, Phillis, in between your slave duties, could you sit down and pen a few poems? I think it would be really important for you to do that in between cleaning out the chamber pot and washing your mistress's clothes. Nope. She obviously had a delusional sense that it was important for her to sit down and write poems for the world to see. And not only for her to write them for herself, but again, for an audience to read and see her own brilliance. Okay? So again, you just have to look at the work of our fellow artists and writers who created during times of strife, of war, of famine, of despair, to understand what is it that got them to continue to create. And again, it was a delusional sense that there's something about my words that need to show up in the world, and I'm going to do it. So let's talk about how we cultivate a mindset of delusion, right? Okay, hopefully you're with me. Hopefully you believe me when I say that that is the secret of staying motivated and getting yourself to come to the page over and over again. All right. So how do we do it? How do you cultivate this mindset of delusion? All right. It's easy. I have it down in 4 steps. Okay. Step 1 to cultivate a mindset of delusional belief is to actually just tell yourself that you have the right and the responsibility to write and get your work out into the world. Now, I know that sounds simple and like just too easy. Like, what, I just have to tell myself that? Yes, Sheila, you do. And it's the same. It's no different than anything else, any other mindset shift. If you are going to start training for a marathon and you've only ever run 2 miles, you are going to have to tell yourself, like, you're going to have to repeat the mantra over and over again. You can run the 10 miles, the marathon, 26 miles. You can do it. Just 1 foot in front of the other. You can do it. It's very possible that you don't believe it because it's never happened before. Like, you've never run a marathon, but one day you decided you're going to run a marathon, and it takes a little bit of delusion. It would for me, at least, because I've only run, my longest race I've ever run is 10 miles, and I thought I was going to die after doing it. But if I wanted to run a marathon, I would have to have some delusional thinking to start the process. So step 1 is to simply remind yourself on a daily basis, I have the right and the responsibility to write and put my work out there. I know that my work matters and that somebody in the world is going to want to read it. You repeat that to yourself. My work matters and somebody in the world is going to want to read it. Now, step 2 is to be a student of history. Be a student of history and study the life and times of our literary ancestors who did exactly what you need to do, what you want to do. Like I mentioned, Phillis Wheatley. How is it that this enslaved woman, she wasn't writing slave narratives. She wasn't writing protest poems. She was writing classical poetry, okay? While being enslaved. And then even after she was freed and she had to work as a chambermaid, taking care of her 3 sickly children, her husband was in debtor's prison, okay? She still wrote poetry every single day. How did she commit to writing poetry amidst the squalor and disappointment of her life? Because she maintained that delusional belief in her right to not only write, but to let the world read her poetry. Because not only did she write poems even throughout, like for her whole entire life, at the worst moments, but she was also submitting her poetry to publishers over and over again, despite rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. Only somebody with a delusional belief of self that they're right to write would do that. Okay? Also, I want to call your attention to Sor Juana de la Cruz. If you know Sor Juana's story, you know what I'm talking about. This is a young woman who was basically a child prodigy. She is super intelligent and came from a well enough to do family, had a life living in the court because she became like the court darling, could have had a very, very well-placed marriage. This is late, by the way, this is in the 1600s in Mexico. But her delusional belief in her own right to write was so great, she turned down a marriage and instead became a cloistered nun because she decided that her writing was so important that it would be better to be a nun where she would have the freedom to write than to be some man's wife where she would be restricted to having children and not being able to do her writing. Think about that. Delusional in the sense that, like, I think that my writing is going to be so important that I should become a nun so that I can write and get my work out into the world. Not only did she do that, but her work was literally considered one of the first, I'm reading here, one of the first documents written in the Western Hemisphere to defend the rights of women to study, to teach, and to write. I literally picked up this book in, I don't know, what city was I in? I can't even remember. I was somewhere in Europe. So think about this. 1600 cloistered nun says, my writing is going to be so important that a girl named Lori Tharps is going to be reading it in the 2020, what year are we in? 2026, talking about it to other people. My work is going to uplift women all over the world. And so I need to write it. Period. I will become a nun if that's what I have to do, which she did. She's writing feminist texts. She's writing love poems as a cloistered nun, believing not only that if she wrote it, that it would get published. She was like enemy of the state to the Catholic Church, and she still got her work published, and she still kept writing up until the very end because she had a delusional sense of her right to write and to get her work published. And look what happened. So number 2 is to be a student of history. It is to be a student of history, study not the works of our literary ancestors, but their lifestyles, their writing habits. How did they maintain their delusional sense that they had the right to write and to put their work out into the world? All right, step number 3 is to put your blinders on and protect your peace. Protect your peace, put your blinders on. This may ruffle some feathers, but the truth is, as a writer, as a creative, you need to protect your peace. You need a certain level of peace in order to do your work, to write, okay? In order to be a creative, you have to, you have to give yourself the opportunity to have like an open mind, a peaceful mind, so you can do the work. Does that mean you can't protest? You can't call your senators and tell them not to pass that awful federal book banning bill? No, of course not. You can do what you need to do, but you also need to protect your peace. You also need to be okay with saying, I need to have a space. I need to turn off my notifications on my phone. I need to not watch the news every night because my work is that important. Again, Sor Juana was like, girl, I'm going to have to become a cloistered nun because I need to protect my peace that much because I know that this work is going to be that important. So do what you have to do to protect your peace. Again, you may detach from the noise of the outside world if necessary, because what you're trying to create requires concentration and it requires an access to joy, if you will. All right. Number 3, or I don't know if this is 3 or 4. Anyway, the next step that you have to do is to be in community. All right. You need to be in community to help yourself protect your peace and to maintain this delusional bubble that you need to put yourself in. And if you look again at historical precedents, if you think about the Harlem Renaissance, right? Do you remember the Harlem Renaissance? There was a rise of global fascism happening at the same time. The stock market crashed. The Great Depression was going on. Jim Crow laws were activating. The Ku Klux Klan was, riling itself up into a frenzy. And yet, the Harlem Renaissance was the greatest flourishing of Black art and literature. How that happened? Because the Harlem Renaissance wasn't individual people doing one thing here and one thing there. It was one gigantic bubble of Delulu thoughts and behaviors that made it possible for Black people, for like the first concentrated time in American history, to create beautiful art and literature. And remember, it's not like Black people weren't publishing. Did you not just hear me say Phillis Wheatley? Phillis Wheatley was the first Black person to publish a book of poetry in the United States. We had people like Frederick Douglass and Solomon Northrup and all these other people who had written best-selling books, but these were all slave narratives. The Harlem Renaissance was like, girl, I'm gonna write a poem about some flowers, okay? Because I like flowers. I'm gonna write a love story. Jessie Fauset was writing books about middle-class Black people with their, first world problems, okay? So we're not talking about doom and gloom storytelling. We're talking about a flourishing of art, of literature for literature's sake, stories for story's sake, love stories. We are not, and this did not happen as individual people. It happened when there was a community of people supporting one another, uplifting one another, consuming the work, telling each other that, yeah, girl, write that poem. I'm going to create a magazine where you can publish your poem. Yeah, let's go to Alelia Walker's salon, because she's hosting salons, so that there's a space for all of us writers, because you might, on your own, oh, I wrote a poem. Who's going to hear it? Nobody. But now that we've got the Joy Goddess of Harlem having these amazing literary salons, I'm going to write my work, and then other people are going to tell me it's great, and I will keep going, and I'll keep writing more poetry, and I'm going to write more stories. You see, delusional behavior grows in community, right? Like, seriously. That's what the whole, Harlem, the Salem witch trials and like the mass hysteria, girls with their hysteria spreading. I mean, whether you believe it or not, this kind of mindset and behavior, it's also why cults work, right? It's because delusional behavior spreads in community. Everybody's got the delusional behavior. It spreads. And this is what we want to happen. So if you're in a writing community, then you can know that you're going to get other people to help you support and remind you that your delusional belief in your right to write and publish makes sense, right? And you don't have to do it on your own. Sometimes your delusional bubble may get weak, but if you have a lot of fellow delusional writers around you, it's much more likely that you will be able to maintain that sense, that right to write. Okay, so let me review real quick. What are the steps to maintain your delusional belief in your right to write? One, just tell yourself this. You have to remind yourself like a mantra every single day. I have the right and the responsibility to write and to put my work out into the world. Number two, be a student of history. Study the blueprints of our literary ancestors who had to be delusional in their beliefs in their own right to write, given the times that they were living in. Number three, put your blinders on and protect your peace. It is not a bad thing for you to protect your peace so that you can create the work that is going to change other people's lives and impact their lives. And finally, number four, be in community with other writers, because delusional thinking grows amongst other delusional thinkers. I sound like I'm joking, but I'm 100% serious. You have to find fellow delusional thinkers to I mean, when you think about any great movements that happen, somebody has to have the delusional belief that it's possible that men could fly, that we could go to the moon, that Black people have the right to write, that Latino women can have the right to write, that like Indigenous people have the right to, get their stories down on the page. We all have to exercise this delusional thinking in order to keep going and to get ourselves to the page every day, and not just to the page, but also to put our work out into the world. I'm going to do a separate video about our delusional belief in self-publishing or getting our work published and what we have to do to make that happen. But I just wanted to leave you all with this thought today. I hope y'all don't hear all that barking. You probably do. I'm so sorry. I live with a mastiff next door. Anyway, I wanted to leave you all with this video, so that you can start practicing your delusional belief system, so you can get up every day and get your work, your writing down on the page and out into the world. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.